This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Well, if you just turned 60, then you join the camp of Jill McBride. She has as well. She is the former CEO who founded the website grownupdish.com.
I just turned 60. On Sunday nights, I sort my pills.
I just turned 60. If I can't get a dinner reservation by 8 p.m., I'm not going.
I just turned 60. Of course I have to put my glasses on to cook. I just turned 60. Of course, if I have even one glass of wine, I'm going to sleep like crap tonight. I just turned 60. Of course I use my Alexa to ask how old all the celebrities are. Alexa, how old is Lionel Richie?
Lionel Richie is 74 years old.
Listen, there's a lot of those statements in there that I would agree with. You know, if I can't get a dinner reservation by 8, I'm not going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to be there by 4:30 and beat the dinner crowd myself. So.
The early bird gets the worm is what they say.
That's right.
Oh,
sometimes
man.
cheaper prices too. So.
That's right. Exactly. Well, if you just turned 60, I'm sure you identify with a lot of what Jill just had to say there. And, you know, a lot of it is, you know, what should we be doing at 60? We know a lot of things change in our routines, as she kind of mentioned. I'm counting my pills. I'm not going out late. If I have a glass of wine, I'm not going to feel great. So things change in our life, and things also need to change as you start to prepare for retirement. So if somebody just turned 60, they're listening right now, Mark, what should they be doing as far as getting their income and retirement plan together?
Well, first off, give us a call. We've got some checklists we can share with you, some key retirement ages and decisions, timelines that we've got in print, black and white, so people can see the various issues they need to address. And there are a number of them, frankly. If we can get people thinking about this, preferably by their early 50s, certainly mid-50s, that gives us a lot of advantages. We all think about Medicare at age 65, Social Security sometime between 65 and 67. You know, those are obvious big issues. We hit age 73, we have to start taking required minimum distributions out of our traditional pre-tax savings. These kind of issues some people are aware of, but most people aren't aware of the fact that they have opportunities to take control of their retirement savings. You know, I can think of a young couple that, I shouldn't say young, they're a year or two older than I am, I guess, but they came into us when they were 55 and were anxious about preparing. Now, they had done a tremendous job saving in their 401k. But as we talked about these timelines of the things they needed to be aware of, the truth was we weren't able to do a lot for them in terms of immediate investing because pretty much everything they had was in their 401k at work. And they were under the impression that they could not touch that money until they left employment. Well, the truth is not that. The truth is that 3/4 of the 401k plans out there offer what's called an in-service withdrawal provision or an in-service rollover privilege. And basically what this means is that when you reach the age of 59 and a half, you can actually take control of the old money that you've accumulated within your 401k plan. You can roll it out of that group plan into an individual retirement account and then have a whole universe of investment options outside of work that did not exist in the work-based plan. So, for example, this couple had about 20 different mutual funds available to in their work-based plan. And like most 401ks, it did not have any kind of real principal protected options. They were very conservative. They are very conservative still. They're clients of ours now. But what they did was they actually came back to us at the very week that they turned 59 and a half. They called me a couple of years later and says, hey, we're ready. So we showed them how to roll that money out. They were able to choose more appropriate investments than what were available in their 401k. And in their case, more importantly, they were actually able to start doing conversions of those old 401k savings into tax-free Roth IRA status. And that's a critically important thing. We typically prefer having done before age 63 because there's implications to Medicare Part B premiums. And so the earlier we can get together on these things, the better. Certainly by age 55, you ought to be sitting down with a financial professional. We invite folks in or just give us a call. We'll email you over these timelines and just let you see what priorities need to be in place before you take that big leap into the unknown, as it were, into that retirement. There just shouldn't be uncertainty going into retirement. There's lots of opportunities there. There's things like home equity conversion mortgages, commonly known as reverse mortgages, which are not right for everybody, but they're great for some people. But you got to be age 62 to qualify, which means you ought to be learning about it in your 50s. And so there's a number of things like this that people need to get a head start on. And so let's talk.
When it comes to retirement expenses, there's one line item that Americans get wrong, and that's how much they'll spend on healthcare and medical. If you haven't thought about this, sit down. This is probably going to blow your socks off here. They told Fidelity, a recent survey, that over 20 years in retirement, they think that it'll be around $41,000. Again, this is what the folks told Fidelity. But of course, research shows that the real estimate is $315,000. This does not include long-term care, folks. This is every day, you get a cold, go to the doctor. These are things like that. So what's their reaction when you sit down with individuals, Mark, when you point out the differences here of income and planning for healthcare costs down the road?
Well, it's shocking for most people, but it's I think perhaps the most critical part of their planning, because the one certainty for most of us is that as we age, things are going to change. I mean, we've already experienced that in our 40s and 50s. We start getting into our 60s and 70s, and things start changing at a more rapid rate. We become more frail. We start experiencing illness. There may be cognitive issues that come into the picture. And so Medicare is a wonderful health insurance program for people over the age of 65, but there are costs to participating in Medicare. You've got Part B premiums, for example, which right now are about $175 per month per person. And so that's $350 per couple per month. Then you've got your co-pays, you've got vision and dental and hearing kind of cost. All of these things tally up. And so Fidelity does a great service, I think, to Americans by updating this study every year. And I'm so glad that you pointed out that long-term care is not part of that study, because long-term care is the custodial care. That's the hands-on care that we need as we become sick or frail, often with age, certainly with cognitive ailments. And so I think of my grandfathers, one who had money and one who did not, and how their experience going through dementia was so much different. And it's kind of perverse that money is what makes the difference in care, but it does. And so we need to start addressing these issues earlier than later. And sometimes that means that people have to think differently about their assets, including home equity, for example. We need to be able to put everything on the table and say, for example, with long-term care, are you like most Americans where you don't have a conscious plan in place? And if so, what that means by default is that you are agreeing to pay 100% of a future unknown liability. Now think about that. Get your mind around that. You're by default agreeing to pay 100% of a future unknown liability. That can be absolutely devastating for people, certainly when the costs are between $80,000 to $100,000 a year per spouse for long-term care right now. And so I'm a big proponent of what we call building a moat around the castle. I lived in Europe for 6 years, and I remember as a child visiting castles and all, and certainly when I went back as a young adult, there was always a moat around the castle, and its purpose was to keep the invaders away from the treasury, which was in the heart of the castle keep, as they call it. Well, for many people, the healthcare providers are basically the invaders. I mean, they have good intentions, but they're coming after your money because they're providing care that we need. And so we need to have some kind of protective measures in place to protect the family wealth. And there's absolutely ways to do that without even giving up the wealth. There's ways to multi-purpose wealth so that we can put airbags or guardrails, whatever analogy we want to use, in place there, that moat, to protect the family's wealth. One other, just before I shut up on this topic, there was an interesting comment recently made by an academic who said that Americans, in light of these studies from Fidelity, he was commenting on these things. He said Americans probably should think differently about Social Security. They should probably think of Social Security as their primary funding source for medical costs and retirement, which was interesting. So what he's saying is we don't think of Social Security, we shouldn't be thinking of it so much as an income source, supplemental income, but rather as a means of paying for these massive costs that are going to be coming in retirement related to our health. I thought that was a profound insight and perhaps something that many Americans should embrace as a planning strategy. It's different for everyone, of course, and so we invite you in. Let's take a look. How are you prepared for future healthcare costs? Is that even part of your plan? There was another study done that just boggles my mind. It says that 7%, only 7% of financial advisors are discussing long-term care with their clients. Well, to me, that's absolute malpractice. That's certainly a reason to fire your advisor if they haven't been talking about this, because long-term care is the greatest social health crisis of our time. And that's a big thing to say right after a pandemic. It is the time bomb that will blow up people's retirement plans. And if your advisor who you've been paying to guide you hasn't even been addressing that, well, what in the world are they addressing? It doesn't matter if they got you a 0.5% greater rate of return if all that money is going to get blown up in healthcare cost. Does that make sense? I mean, it doesn't really matter what the rate of return is if that money is going to be lost to healthcare cost. We absolutely have to address the healthcare costs. So let's come on in. Let's talk about it.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts' principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.